Alright, third portion of Lecture 10. This will definitely be our last one. If we run out of, I ran out of time on the last one. If I run out of time in this one, I'm not going to do another one. We were doing, let me flip back to the Excel spreadsheet. We were doing modified IRR. Found 24.8% was the modified IRR. So that's the return we're going to earn. And then we're coming back here to answer the questions. Modified IRR is greater than the weighted average cost of capital. It means it's a good project. Here's your answers. Well, I'm not sure I ever scrolled down and saw the question, but it was the same question we've seen with all the other problems. What was the project's modified IRR? Should you take the project? And the answer is modified IRR 24.8% and take the project. All right, our last decision criterion is payback period. It's got a real fancy looking formula here, but it's a pretty simple concept, which is how long is it going to take until you get your money back? It's easy to figure out between 2 years. So for example, let's go do that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and erase these. The way to find that out is just to do a running total. So I do equals 40,000, and then I do equals the previous number. So I scroll up one to the previous cell and add in how much you're going to make the next year. And then, for example, if you started in year 0 by losing 40,000, after you made 20,000, now you've only lost 20,000. And then I can just double click this here and scroll it down. And it basically tells you each year your running total, how much you've made. So you started by losing 40,000. After 1 year, you've only lost 20,000. After 2 years, you lost 4,000. So the answer to the payback period is somewhere between 1 year and 2 year. The hardest part of this problem is figuring out where it is between 1 year and 2 year. So they have this little formula here to tell you that. That's this part of it. The number of years prior to the full recovery, that would be 1 year, because we know it's somewhere between 1 and 2 years. So that would be 1 year in our problem. And then we need to do this function here. It says unrecovered costs at the start of the year divided by the cash flow during full recovery year. I'm not sure I wrote that right, but basically what it means is between this year and this year, how much more did we need to make would be our numerator, versus how much did we make would be our denominator. How much did we need to make? Well, we needed to make 20,000, so I can do a function here and say equals 20,000, and I can divide it by how much we made total that year, 24,000. It's going to come out negative because in our Excel spreadsheet this is negative number. So I'm going to stick a negative in there. But it's 0.83. And so your answer is actually 1.83. 1.83 years. And that 8.83 is assuming we're going to have a linear relationship between how much cash we make in that year. It's just an assumption. So you're just getting a close estimate. So I don't know if I mentioned this in the previous lecture or not. I mentioned it, but the thing might have stopped recording. So I can't remember if it stopped recording yet or not. But there's technically no decision criterion on payback period, meaning there's no... The payback period is actually... I don't consider it a very important criterion at all for capital budgeting. How long it takes you to pay back your money really doesn't even tell you. You could have a negative net present value project that pays back really fast, but then you have to pay more money in the future or something, and that'd be a rare occurrence. It's more a measure of risk. How long is your money going to be tied up? So it is, all else equal, it's better to have a shorter payback period, obviously. You'd like to get paid back quicker. But it doesn't tell you as much information like the others, as opposed to, you could maybe think of it this way. You could have 2 projects you could take, and you can only take one or the other. They're called mutually exclusive projects. And one of them has a shorter payback period. But that shorter payback period one might have a much smaller net present value and IRR than the other one. You'd probably rather take the other one. So payback period by itself really doesn't tell you that much in terms of should I take the project or not. But it is, the reason we still teach it in the finance textbooks is the majority of actual finance practitioners love payback period. I mean, and part of the problem is a lot of them don't understand net present value and IRR, and so they just look at how long is it going to take me to get my money back, and that's it. That's the only thing they care about. And that's all right. That's a good metric. It's just not it doesn't give you a full picture of whether or not the project's good or not. But all right, so the example question is same problem as above. What's the payback period? And it's 1.83. So, and that's a really good payback period. I mean, you'd love to take a project that pays you back in 1.83 years, because then everything after that 1.83 years, one way to think of that is it's profit. And that's not technically true because we're not considering time value money, which is why we have this other metric, which is called discounted payback period, which is really similar to payback period, but prior to doing the payback period calculation, we convert all cash flows into present value. And then it's really going to give you an idea of how long does it take to get my money back, because it's also going to include the time value money component. So let's go back here to Excel. I don't really understand this, but Excel, they have all these great finance functions, and they have a lot more than we've even used in this class, but they do not have payback period or discounted payback period as a straight function, which is why we had to do this, added them up, and then calculated ourselves. I'm not real sure why Excel doesn't have that in there. It'd be nice if they did. But in order to do this one, we're going to have to do even another step of calculations, which is before we can calculate the payback period, we need to convert all these cash flows into present values. So if you had a finance calculator, this would take a long time. There's multiple versions of these finance calculators. Some of these can actually calculate straight payback periods, and they can calculate discounted payback periods. The standard one, the BA2 Plus Texas Instruments that we use around here, doesn't actually do either of them. And so they're both you have to do by hand. And then Excel doesn't do either of them either, but it's much easier to do a discounted payback period with Excel than it would be with a hand calculator, even if you had the fancier versions. But the first step we have to do is convert all these into present values. And so there's a function called present value, and it's got the 5 inputs, and we've done this before. You put your rate in there. Ours is 12%. You put your number of payments in there. That's going to be your left column over here. You put your payment. In our case, that's 0. This is not an annuity. We're just converting one cash flow. And then the last one is your future value, which is the one we want to convert. Hit enter. And it converts, and I'll copy it down. And I actually want to put a negative in front of this. Because it automatically flips the cash flow. That puts it in the same sign as the one we started with. But all this is here on this column is the present value of each of these cash flows. So they're all smaller, except for the one in year 0 because it's already in year 0. So it didn't have to discount anything, so it kept it at 40,000. Now real quick, I want to go ahead and say I'm not going to actually make you do a discounted payback period on any exams or any tests. It's too many steps to follow. I'd love it if you could do it, but I'm not going to test you on this particular problem. But let's go ahead and finish up the problem since I started it. I want you to understand what it is, basically. So we're going to do the same thing we did prior. We're going to add the cash flows up as they go. So we start by we've lost 40,000, and then after 1 year we're still down, counting them up. We're down 22,000, then we're down 3,000. Notice we had recovered all our money by year 2. We'd actually recovered it by year 1.83. Now we haven't, because now we're using present values, which is just a better way to do payback. If you're actually going to do payback, which doesn't, again, I don't feel is a real great metric. This is definitely a better way to do it. But then it's somewhere between year 2 and 3, and we need to know exactly what it is. So over here, we're going to calculate the fraction. And again, it equals the amount you needed to make back. It's how short you were. Well, we were $3,010 short in year 2. And we divide that by how much we made in year 3. And this is going to have a negative on it again. So we're going to put the negative sign on the front to make it a positive number. And this is not a dollar sign. Change my format up here. It's 0.18 basically. So it's 2.18. We were at 2 years plus 0.18 years. So if I go back over here and look at my answer, it's 2.18. Alright, so let's wrap up everything real quick. Definitely need to know how to do a net present value and an IRR and a payback on any of the tests, the final tests that we have. The discounted payback I won't test you on. Modified IRR, I might test you on that because all it is a different function in Excel. And you should all have access to Excel because you're taking your exam through the computer. So these calculators don't always have modified IRR, and so when we do these tests here, a lot of times we'll leave that off. But I'm actually going to I might have 1 or 2 questions on modified IRR in there, probably just one. So you might learn that function. Don't spend an inordinate amount of time on it because it'll only be 1 or 2 questions. But all right, so from here to the final, which will be a week from now at least. We'll see if I haven't set the time for the final yet in stone. I need to email Jean and figure out when the best time is for everybody. But if you'd all like to have another opportunity to have a Skype or something, we'll do that. If you have any questions, send me an email. Write it on the discussion board. I haven't been real great about reading the discussion board every day. I have 3 different email accounts already with 3 different universities I teach at. So I don't get to the discussion board but maybe once or twice a week. So email is best because you'll get me quicker. Or you can always call me if you need to. I don't know how much it costs to make a call that long distance. But anyways, I hope you learned something from this class, or at least got inspired by something that you'll go out and read more about and then learn more in that, because that's how you really learn, is when you get interested in something and you go out and read about it yourself. Watching these lectures and me talk about something, you're not going to learn that much. You're usually just studying to figure out what you need to know to pass the exam. So I hope you got inspired about something throughout the course of the semester, caught your interest, and you thought, well, this is interesting, I'll learn more about it. So anyways, I hope to keep in touch. You can always send me, keep in touch if there's any way I can help you in the future with anything, please let me know. We still have the final, so the course isn't quite over yet, but this is probably the last video we'll have. So thank you all. Good luck on the final, and good luck with everything else in the future.